So these are different models of communication that they identified, that sometimes leaders see it one way, we see it as another. The first one is press agentry. This, the example that they used was something like, the circus is coming to town. Press agentry is running lions and elephants and tigers, oh my, through the main street. It's staging a stunt. It's an event. Get their attention, get their awareness, and then move on. It's one way. You're just sending out this kind of attention-grabbing stuff. That evolved over time into more public information. It's still one way, but the idea here is you're not just trying to get this stunt visibility, not just the publicity, but to try to get information across that could be helpful and useful to your audience. So it's evolved, it's a step further along. And I think this is where a lot of senior leaders have gotten to. It's beyond stunt, but they see it as mostly providing information, making people aware of things, whether it's through certain channels like a story in the paper, or I just want to get this topic out there. There's two different ways of looking at two-way communication, and I had not realized this or thought about it until I was reading their study. There's asymmetrical and there's symmetrical. So here's the difference. Two-way asymmetrical means that yes, we'll engage in a dialogue with our key stakeholders. We'll have meetings with advocacy groups, we'll have meetings with employees. We'll do all of these two-way engaged dialogues. But the management is doing it for the purpose of better understanding the other party to still get their point across the way they want to. So there's no sense of management will change at all. They're doing the listening just to better manipulate the audience, in essence. So it's asymmetrical. All power is retained by them. The research, the dialogue is just to better manipulate the results of the interaction. Two-way symmetrical is where you would engage in dialogue with these different publics. You may actually change your position along the way. So this is a very different style of communication. You may meet with the advocacy groups, and you may realize that there's something they're saying that has a kernel of truth to it. And so you may change your policy a little bit. And then because you've changed your policy a little bit, they might become a little more willing to cut you some slack on something else that they were upset about. So it's this constant, it's like a dance. You both keep moving closer to each other because of the listening. You're both willing to change. This is not where most company managements are. They may have gotten to the two-way portion, but only for the purpose of getting their way.
Do you have an example of two-way symmetrical?
Two-way symmetrical? Yeah, it would be, for example, there's a company called Genzyme in Belgium, and they've worked with advocacy groups for some disease states that they have some medicines or products for, and it started out kind of contentious, but they worked together now to the point that they have a combined website that they have created together. So over time, they really listened to what the needs and concerns of these patients were and built so much trust with them that they now work together and try to get things going beyond their small group. That's one example that I just know from my own experience. This happens in labor negotiations eventually. You know, it's like you start with your firm position, you start with your firm position, you know you're going to give somewhere. You just don't know exactly where you're going to give till the dance is done, or in diplomatic negotiations. That's really two-way symmetrical. You really should be listening to each other to figure out, should you change your position on something? Maybe there's information you really weren't aware of. You didn't fully understand the situation. But it's being willing to listen. So you need to figure out for yourselves where you are, where you think communication is, and where your leadership thinks communication is and where it should be. So at some point you just need to agree on it. Actually write it down, whether it's a policy statement or role definitions. But if you can agree on it and stay within it, it will work better. It's when you're constantly fighting with what you think it should be that nothing much happens.
I would say that from my experience that you can vary between the two. You can be two-way symmetrical on most issues, and there's some issues in areas where somebody has to kind of, there is a those situations.
Yeah, no, and you're right. It's not that you apply it to everything. If there's a fire in the building, you're not going to have a dialogue of, do you think we should go out this door or should we go out this door? You're not going to engage in dialogue. There are times that you simply must urgently communicate one way. But you're right, it's situational. It's just, does management see that two-way symmetrical is a good thing at all to be ever considered as a technique? Oh. Now, the core skills of a communicator that came out of this is, in addition to the tactical skills, we need to have strategic and operational management capabilities. So strategic means being able to connect to goals. And I think we all talk about strategy. That came up a lot. What's missing, though, is the operational knowledge, which means really understanding what our organizations do, how they operate, the business processes of our organization. The better we understand that, the more we can actually help our organizations succeed. Whether it's internal or external communication, it's really understanding what the organization does, how it delivers it, how those processes work. Another skill they discovered was research, that the communicator needed to know how and when to use research. They didn't have to be able to write a perfect survey, but they needed to know when do you go to an audience to figure out what you don't know, to pre-test something, or certain things will need to have a baseline and an end line measurement. So it's being aware of research and the role it can play. The last two were really surprising. I had never thought of them as being in a job description for a communicator, but especially if you want to be higher and higher in management circles, you do need to learn two very important skills of negotiation and persuasion. We are going to touch on all of these skills today. We're going to teach you a technique for persuading management to pursue a particular course of action. And negotiation, we're going to show you two different techniques when you sort of come to a butting of the heads. So you don't want to have it resolved by just the more senior person saying, that's what you're going to do. You want to find two different ways of getting through this impasse and break the breakdown.